It was a typical morning in the village of Dumburu, the sun shining brightly as it pierced through the mist that often hovered over the dense trees by the river. The village was alive with the sounds of birds, the rhythm of life carrying on as usual. Kofi, a young boy of 18, had just woken up to the soft rustling of his mother's voice calling him for breakfast. But when he entered the royal chambers, everything stopped. The usual warmth that greeted him every morning was replaced with a chilling silence. There, standing in the center of the room, was his mother, transformed. The queen, whose voice had once commanded nations and whose smile had brightened the darkest corners of the kingdom, was now nothing but a statue. Her once warm brown skin, the color of earth and life, was now stone, smooth, gray, and cold. Her eyes, usually so full of wisdom, were now lifeless, staring ahead with a calmness that felt unnatural. Her regal clothes, made of finely woven cloth adorned with beads and gold, were frozen in mid-motion, giving the illusion that she might have moved just a moment ago. Kofi stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. "Mother," he whispered, his voice trembling. His knees buckled beneath him, and he sank to the floor, the reality of what he was seeing too much to comprehend. The air was thick with an unsettling quiet. The room, which had once been full of the scent of fresh herbs and soft laughter, now felt like a tomb. The queen had been the heartbeat of the village. Her wisdom and leadership had kept the village safe, prosperous, and protected from the spirits of the river. But now, she was a mere statue, a monument to something unknown, something far more sinister. Kofi's mind raced, but his body felt heavy. He wanted to shout, to scream, but words escaped him. His mother had been everything to him, his protector, his guide, and his confidant. Now, she was nothing but stone. The sound of footsteps broke the silence, and Kofi looked up to see Elder Obeisai, the oldest and wisest of the village elders, entering the room. His wrinkled face, usually calm and serene, was now filled with concern. "What has happened?" Kofi managed to ask, his voice barely a whisper. Obeisai looked at the statue of the queen with a sad, knowing look. He took a deep breath before answering. "Your mother, she has been turned into stone." Kofi's eyes widened. "Turned into stone? But how? Why?" Obeisai sighed, walking closer to the queen's statue. "There is much about this world you don't know, Kofi. Much about your mother's past, her sacrifices, and the secrets she guarded." Kofi's confusion only deepened. "What do you mean? She was just my mother, the queen who ruled our people. What secret could she possibly have?" Obeisai looked back at Kofi, his face grim. "There is an ancient prophecy, one tied to your mother's lineage. The statue, it is a sign of something greater, something that is about to happen. You must understand the power of the river, the spirits, and the forces at play in our world." Kofi sat alone in the royal chamber, staring at the stone figure of his mother. The silence in the room felt suffocating, the once familiar scent of her perfume now replaced by the eerie coldness of the stone. He had tried to touch her, but the smooth surface of her stone skin offered no warmth, no life. His mother, the queen, had been reduced to a lifeless statue, frozen in time, and Kofi had no idea how to break the curse. Minutes turned to hours as he sat in the chamber, his thoughts racing. What had happened to her? Who could have done this to her? The village elders had warned him about the dangers of the river, but this was something far worse. The river was a source of life for the village, providing water for the crops, sustaining the people, and even serving as a spiritual force that connected them to the ancestors. But now it felt like something darker had come to life within it, a force that had reached out and taken his mother. The village of Dumburu had been peaceful for as long as Kofi could remember. His mother, Queen Amina, had ruled with grace and wisdom, bringing prosperity and protection to their people. But now everything had changed. The river, which had always been a source of life, seemed to hold an ominous power, and Kofi couldn't shake the feeling that the two were connected. Suddenly, the door to the chamber creaked open, and Elder Obesai entered, his face even more somber than before. His long, white beard swayed slightly as he walked, and his old hands clutched a staff made from the wood of an ancient tree. His eyes, however, were filled with sorrow, the weight of knowledge heavy in them. "Kofi," he said softly, taking a seat beside him. "I know this is difficult, but you must listen. The truth is not easy to hear, but it is the only way forward." Kofi looked up at the elder, his eyes filled with frustration and confusion. "What truth, Obesai? What is happening to my mother? Why has she been turned into stone?" Obesai sighed, his gaze shifting to the stone statue of Queen Amina. "Your mother was not just a queen, Kofi. She was the guardian of an ancient secret, one tied to the very river that sustains this village. She carried the weight of this secret for years, and now that secret has come to claim her." Kofi's heart raced. The river? What secret? Why didn't she ever tell me? Why didn't she share it with the people? The elder's face grew even more grave. "The secret your mother guarded is tied to the very origins of this village, Kofi. Long before your mother's time, the river was a sacred place, a force of both creation and destruction. It was said that the river could grant unimaginable power to those who understood its true nature. But such power came at a great cost. Is that what happened to her?" Kofi asked, his voice trembling. "Did she try to harness the power of the river?" "No," Obesai replied, shaking his head. "Your mother was always wise. She never tried to control the river, but she knew its power well. The curse placed upon her is not one of her doing. It is a consequence of an ancient pact, one that dates back centuries. A pact made by the ancestors to ensure the safety and prosperity of the village. But as with all such pacts, there is a price." Kofi stood up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "A price? What price? And why was she the one to pay it? What does this have to do with me?" Obesai looked up at Kofi, his eyes filled with sorrow and regret. "The price was the life of the queen who would protect the village, Kofi. Your mother was chosen to bear this burden, to guard the river's secret and ensure that the balance was kept. But the balance has shifted, and now the river seeks to reclaim what it gave." "What do you mean, Obesai?" Kofi asked, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. "What does the river take her? What must I do to save her?" "The river will take what it has given," Obesai said slowly, his voice heavy. "But it will not take her life completely. It will turn her into stone, and in doing so, it will strip her of her power. Her soul will remain trapped within the statue, bound to the river's will." Kofi clenched his fists, his heart aching with the thought of his mother's soul trapped in stone. "How do I stop it, Obesai? How do I save her?" Obesai's eyes softened as he placed a hand on Kofi's shoulder. "To break the curse, you must travel to the source of the river, to the place where the pact was made long ago. There, you will find the Stone of Balance, an ancient artifact that holds the key to restoring the river's equilibrium. But the path to the stone is fraught with danger, Kofi. The river will not give up its power without a fight." Kofi looked at the elder, a sense of resolve settling in his chest. "I will do it, Obesai. I will go to the source of the river. I will find the Stone of Balance and restore my mother." Obesai nodded, his eyes filled with both pride and sorrow. "You are brave, Kofi. But know this, the river will test you. It will test your courage, your wisdom, and your heart. Only by understanding the true nature of the river can you hope to defeat the darkness that has begun to take hold." Kofi nodded, his mind now focused on the path ahead. The road would be long and treacherous, but he had no choice. His mother, his queen, needed him, and he would not rest until he had saved her. The following days were filled with preparations. Kofi gathered provisions, spoke with the village elders, and learned more about the river's secrets. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but he was determined to face whatever came his way. The source of the river, deep in the jungle, was a place few had dared to go, but Kofi felt the weight of his mission settle on him like a mantle of responsibility. On the morning of his departure, as the village gathered to see him off, Kofi stood by the river's edge, staring at the water that had once been a source of peace. The river now felt different, darker somehow, as if it knew what he was about to attempt. The water was restless, its flow rapid and tumultuous, as if to warn him of the danger that lay ahead. But Kofi did not flinch. He stepped into the water, feeling its cold touch as it swirled around his legs, pulling him deeper into its flow. The journey was just beginning, and there was no turning back. Kofi's journey is just beginning, and the river's power is stronger than ever. What challenges will he face on his quest to save his mother? Will he succeed, or will the river claim him too? Stay tuned for more, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to follow Kofi's incredible adventure. The path ahead was uncertain, and as Kofi made his way into the dense forest, the weight of his mission pressed heavily on his shoulders. His mother's transformation into a stone statue, once a haunting image, now seemed like a distant memory. His mind was focused solely on the task at hand, the journey to the source of the river, where he would seek the stone of balance. The village had given him their blessings, and the elders had shared every scrap of knowledge they had about the river and its ancient secrets. But Kofi knew that no matter how much information he had, the journey would be his alone. The jungle was vast, and the river's source was a sacred, hidden place, far from the safety of the village. Kofi's feet moved steadily on the narrow path that wound through the forest. Tall trees with thick canopies of leaves stood like silent sentinels, their roots twisting around each other, creating a maze of natural obstacles. The air was thick with humidity, and the sounds of the jungle echoed around him. The calls of birds, the rustle of small animals in the underbrush, and the distant growl of unseen creatures. As he walked, Kofi's thoughts drifted to his mother. She had always been a figure of strength in his life. As a child, he'd run to her for comfort when he was scared, seeking the safety of her arms. But now, that safety was gone, replaced by uncertainty and a fierce determination. He couldn't afford to dwell on fear. The river had taken her, and it was up to him to bring her back. After hours of walking, the path grew more difficult to navigate. The trees grew thicker, their branches tangled overhead, blocking out much of the sunlight. The ground became soft, and Kofi had to watch his step carefully to avoid slipping. Sweat dripped down his face, but he refused to stop. He couldn't afford to rest now. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from behind him. Kofi froze, his heart racing as the sound grew louder. His eyes scanned the forest around him, but he saw nothing. The jungle seemed to hold its breath, the air tense with anticipation. Then, a large shape lunged from the bushes, its teeth bared and its eyes glowing with hunger. A lion, a massive, powerful creature, emerged from the underbrush, its muscles rippling as it padded toward Kofi. He instinctively reached for his knife, but the lion was too fast. It was upon him in an instant, its claws swiping at him, forcing him to roll out of the way. Kofi's heart pounded in his chest as he scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. He had fought wild animals before, but this was different. This lion was hungry, and it was not about to back down. With a deep breath, Kofi steadied himself. He knew he couldn't let the lion overpower him. He had to stay calm, use his instincts, and wait for the right moment. The lion growled again, its eyes narrowing as it prepared for another strike. Kofi waited, every muscle in his body tense. The lion pounced. At the last possible moment, Kofi rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the lion's claws. He struck quickly, plunging his knife into the lion's flank. The creature let out a startled roar, but Kofi held his ground, pulling the knife out and slicing again. The lion staggered back, blood flowing from its wounds, before it finally turned and fled into the forest. Kofi exhaled, his heart still racing. He wiped the sweat from his brow, taking a moment to calm himself. That had been close. He had fought animals before, but this was different. His mother's transformation had lit a fire inside him, one that he couldn't extinguish. He had no time for fear. Not now, not with everything at stake. After a moment, Kofi continued on his path, the jungle now feeling even more oppressive. The sounds of the animals had quieted, and the air seemed heavier, filled with unseen eyes watching his every move. The jungle was alive, and he had to tread carefully if he was going to reach the source of the river. Hours passed, and Kofi's feet ached, his body tired from the long trek. He was beginning to question whether he had made the right decision. The path was growing darker, and the thick foliage of the jungle seemed to close in around him. The dense trees blocked out the sun, and the only light came from the pale glow of the moon overhead. Suddenly, Kofi saw a flicker of light in the distance, a small fire glowing softly between the trees. He approached cautiously, unsure whether it was a camp or something else entirely. As he drew closer, he saw a figure sitting by the fire, wrapped in a tattered cloak. The figure looked up at him as he approached, and Kofi froze. The stranger's eyes were sharp, glinting with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The firelight cast eerie shadows across the figure's face, making it difficult to read their expression. The stranger's voice was low and calm as they spoke. "You seek the river's source, don't you?" Kofi nodded cautiously. "Yes, I have to find it. I need to understand what happened to my mother." The stranger's gaze softened, and they gestured for Kofi to sit by the fire. "You're not the first to come looking for answers, boy," the stranger said. "The river's secrets are not for the faint of heart. It will test you, but only by understanding its power can you hope to save what you've lost." Kofi sat down beside the fire, his mind racing. "I don't have much time. I need to reach the river's source before it's too late." The stranger nodded slowly. "The river gives, but it also takes. To restore what's been lost, you must find the balance. The stone of balance is not just an object, it is a test. If you're not ready to face the river's judgment, you will be lost forever." Kofi looked at the stranger, his heart heavy with the weight of their words. "What do you mean by the river's judgment?" The stranger's eyes grew distant, as though recalling a memory long forgotten. "The river tests the hearts of those who seek its power. It will show you things you do not wish to see. It will make you question your worth and your purpose. If you are strong enough to accept the truth, it will give you what you seek. But if you falter," the stranger's voice trailed off, and Kofi felt the weight of their warning settle on his chest. Kofi stood up, determination flooding his body. "I won't fail. I can't. My mother's life is at stake." The stranger stood as well, his eyes filled with something akin to pity. "Then go. But remember, the river does not forgive easily. Be ready for what lies ahead." Kofi's journey is far from over, and the river's trials have only just begun. What will he face next on his quest to save his mother? Stay tuned for the next chapter. The jungle seemed to stretch endlessly before Kofi. Every step felt heavier than the last, as though the very earth beneath his feet was testing his resolve. His body ached from the long trek, but his mind was fixed on one thing: the river's source and the stone of balance that he believed could restore his mother. The moonlight above broke through the dense canopy of trees in thin shafts, casting eerie shadows on the ground. The deeper Kofi ventured into the jungle, the more alive it seemed. The air was thick with the sounds of distant creatures, calls from the jungle's depths that Kofi could not understand but instinctively feared. The world around him felt both alive and hostile, like the jungle itself was watching, waiting. Hours had passed since he encountered the stranger by the fire, and though the stranger's words echoed in Kofi's mind, they did little to ease his nerves. "The river tests the hearts of those who seek its power," the stranger had said. "If you falter, you will be lost forever." Kofi didn't have time to question the meaning behind those words. His mother needed him. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but he couldn't stop now. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the trees, startling Kofi. His instincts kicked in, and he dropped to a crouch, eyes scanning the darkness. There, just at the edge of his vision, a pair of glowing eyes stared back at him. A large figure emerged from the shadows, a jaguar, sleek and powerful, its muscles rippling beneath its spotted coat. Kofi's heart pounded, but he kept his breathing steady. He had dealt with animals before, but there was something different about this one. The air between them was charged, as if the jaguar wasn't just a predator. It was a guardian, standing between Kofi and his goal. The jungle was alive, and the river's source was close. The jaguar took a step forward, its gaze locked on Kofi. Its growl grew louder, deepening in the stillness of the jungle. Kofi slowly reached for the small knife at his belt. The jaguar's eyes never left his, and Kofi knew that he couldn't fight it head-on. The creature was too powerful, too quick. He exhaled slowly, remembering the words of the stranger. The river tests the hearts of those who seek its power. With that thought, Kofi took a deep breath and stood tall. He didn't take his eyes off the jaguar, but he stopped reaching for his knife. Instead, he began to speak, his voice low but firm. "I don't wish to fight you," Kofi said, his voice steady despite the tension. "I only seek the truth of the river, the stone of balance. I have no quarrel with you." The jaguar's growl softened slightly, and it tilted its head as if considering his words. Kofi's heart raced, but he held his ground. Slowly, the jaguar took another step forward, its muscles tensing as though it was deciding whether to attack or leave. The jungle around them was still. The moonlight flickered on the jaguar's coat, highlighting the power it held. Kofi's mind raced, trying to remember everything he had been taught about the jungle, about respecting the creatures within it. His survival depended on his ability to respect the forces of nature, not challenge them. Finally, the jaguar stopped, its glowing eyes never leaving Kofi's face. It let out one last, deep growl before turning away, slipping back into the shadows of the jungle. Kofi stood there, breathing heavily, his body still tensed. The jungle had spoken. The jaguar wasn't his enemy. It was a test. The river's power, the path ahead, was not meant to be taken by force. It was a test of character, of understanding, and of balance. As he stood in the silence that followed, Kofi knew that he had passed the first test. The jungle and the river were watching. They would guide him, or they would consume him. With renewed determination, Kofi continued on his path, the air growing thicker and the jungle seeming to grow darker as he approached the river's source. The journey was becoming increasingly difficult. The trees were taller, their branches reaching out like arms, trying to block his progress. The air was dense with humidity, and the further Kofi walked, the more exhausted he became. But he couldn't stop now. He had come too far, and the fate of his mother depended on him. Just as he thought he couldn't take another step, the ground beneath him shifted. Kofi stumbled, his foot sinking into a soft patch of earth. He caught himself before falling, but the noise of his fall seemed to echo in the stillness of the jungle. From ahead, a voice called out, sharp and clear, "You are close." Kofi looked up, startled. He hadn't expected to hear a voice here in the jungle. The voice was low but carried a strange power. He could feel it reverberate in his chest. From the shadows of the trees, an old figure stepped forward. His skin was dark and weathered, his eyes sharp and bright. He wore a simple cloak made from the woven fibers of the jungle, his feet bare against the earth. "You've made it this far," the old man said, his voice carrying wisdom and weight. "But the river will not give freely. It will test your heart." Kofi stood tall, his breath steady. "I've come for the stone of balance. I must restore my mother." The old man nodded slowly. "Yes, you seek the stone, but it is not a simple object. The river will offer you what you want, but it will ask for a price. What are you willing to give?" Kofi's heart raced. He had come so far, but now the truth was beginning to unfold. The journey was not just about finding the stone. It was about understanding the price of power, the price of balance. "I am willing to give anything to save my mother," Kofi replied, his voice steady despite the fear rising within him. The old man looked at him for a long moment before he spoke again. "Then you must go to the heart of the river. The stone of balance will reveal itself to you, but only when you understand the river's power. Only when you are ready to face the truth of what it demands." Kofi nodded. The path was clear now. The river had guided him, and the old man's words had given him clarity. He was ready to face whatever lay ahead, no matter the cost. Kofi is now closer than ever to unlocking the river's secrets and saving his mother. What trials will he face next on his journey? Will he be ready for the truth that awaits? Stay tuned to find out. The jungle felt different now, as if the very air had shifted, Kofi continued his trek through the dense underbrush, the path narrowing with each step. The old man's words echoed in his mind, the heart of the river. It sounded simple enough, but Kofi had come to understand that nothing about this journey was ever simple. Every step brought him closer to something greater, something that would test him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The sun had dipped behind the canopy of trees, leaving only slivers of light to filter through the thick foliage. The jungle had become silent, almost as if it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The ground beneath Kofi's feet was damp and soft, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. It was as if the jungle itself was alive, watching him, sensing his arrival. Kofi paused for a moment, wiping sweat from his brow. The weight of the task ahead was beginning to settle on him. The stone of balance was not just a physical object. It was tied to the very essence of the river, and by extension, to the fate of his mother and the village. What would it ask of him? And what would he be willing to give in return? He could feel the river growing closer, its presence like an invisible force pulling him forward. The air had grown thick with moisture, and the sounds of the jungle seemed to fade into the distance. The deeper he ventured, the more the river's influence seemed to consume everything around him. As he approached the clearing ahead, Kofi noticed the shift in the environment. The trees around him had become less dense, their branches thinning to reveal an open space. In the center of the clearing was a small pool of water, reflecting the dim moonlight that had begun to filter through the canopy. The air was still, the only sound the gentle rush of water that seemed to emanate from the pool. But something was different about the water. It shimmered with a faint glow, casting eerie reflections that danced across the ground. Kofi stepped closer, his heart pounding in his chest. As he knelt by the water, he felt a presence, a sensation that the river was alive, aware of his approach. The water in the pool seemed to swirl on its own, as though responding to his thoughts. And then, something extraordinary happened. A figure rose from the center of the pool, its form materializing slowly from the depths. It was a woman, her body made entirely of water, her features blurred but regal. Her long, flowing hair seemed to shift and ripple like the surface of the river itself. Her eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light, fixed on Kofi with a knowing gaze. For a moment, Kofi couldn't speak. He was captivated by her presence, by the power she exuded. She was not of the physical world, but neither was she entirely a spirit. She was something else, something tied to the river itself. "You have come," the woman said, her voice like the sound of flowing water, soft but commanding. "The river has chosen you, Kofi. But do you understand why?" Kofi stood frozen, his voice caught in his throat. This was it, the heart of the river, and before him stood the very embodiment of its power. She, the river's spirit, was the guardian of its secrets, the keeper of the balance that had been maintained for generations. I came to find the stone of balance," Kofi managed to say, his voice trembling. "I need to save my mother. She's been turned into stone, and only the stone can restore her." The river spirit regarded him for a moment, her eyes glowing brighter with each passing second. "The stone of balance is not merely an object, Kofi. It is a test. It is not a gift, but a trial, a challenge of heart, of courage, and of sacrifice. Your mother was chosen to guard it, to ensure that no one who sought it could misuse its power. She paid the price for the balance, and now you must do the same." Kofi felt a chill run through him as the words sank in. "What must I do?" "The river does not give freely," the spirit replied. "You must choose, Kofi. The stone will give you the power to restore your mother, but it will demand something in return. What are you willing to sacrifice?" Kofi's heart beat faster, his thoughts racing. What could he possibly give in exchange for his mother's life? His heart ached at the thought of losing her. He had already lost so much: his childhood, his sense of safety, his trust in the river. What else could the river want from him? The spirit's gaze softened, as if reading his thoughts. "It is not always something physical, Kofi. The river demands what it needs, and it tests the heart. The question is, will you let go of the things you hold most dear? Will you give up your desire for control and embrace the balance? Kofi's mind reeled. This was not just a test of strength or willpower. It was a test of everything he had come to believe. He had always believed in protecting what he loved, holding on to it, fighting for it. But the river demanded balance, not force. You must decide, the spirit said, her voice now soft and gentle. The stone of balance awaits you, but only if you are ready to accept its price. The river cannot restore what has been lost without taking something in return. Kofi closed his eyes, his thoughts heavy with the burden of the choice before him. He had come so far. He could not turn back now. His mother needed him. I am ready, Kofi said quietly, his voice steady despite the uncertainty in his heart. I will do whatever it takes to save her. The river's spirit nodded, her form dissolving into the water with a ripple, leaving behind the faintest glow. The water in the pool began to swirl, and in the center of the swirling current, a stone began to emerge. The stone of balance was not large, but it shone with an inner light, its surface smooth and polished. As Kofi reached out to take it, he felt a surge of power course through his fingers. The moment he touched it, the water around him seemed to pulse with energy. His heart raced, and the world around him seemed to blur. The river had given him what he sought, but at what cost? Kofi has obtained the stone of balance, but what will it cost him? Will he be able to restore his mother, or will the river demand more than he can give? Don't miss the next chapter in Kofi's journey. Kofi stood at the edge of the river, the stone of balance cradled in his hands. Its surface gleamed faintly under the moonlight, casting an ethereal glow around him. The air seemed thick with energy, a hum that vibrated through the ground beneath his feet. The jungle around him had fallen silent, and for a moment, the world itself seemed to hold its breath. His heart raced as he held the stone. This was it, the key to restoring his mother, to undoing the curse that had taken her. But even as his fingers wrapped around the smooth surface, Kofi couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in the pit of his stomach. The river spirit had warned him, told him that the river did not give freely, that the stone of balance came at a price. But what price would he have to pay? A soft rustling of leaves interrupted his thoughts, and Kofi turned to see the old man from the jungle, the one who had guided him before, standing silently behind him. His eyes were focused on the stone, but there was no hint of surprise on his face. He had known Kofi would reach this point. You've taken it, the old man said, his voice calm but filled with knowing. The river has given you the power you seek, but the question remains, what will you give in return? Kofi's chest tightened. I'll do anything. I just need to save her. My mother, she's trapped. I can't lose her. The old man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving the stone of balance. The river's power is not for the faint of heart. It demands much from those who seek it. You've taken the stone, but now the river will take something from you, something that cannot be returned. Kofi felt a chill run down his spine. The air around him seemed to grow heavier, the silence more oppressive. The weight of the decision he had just made began to settle in his bones. Is there no way to avoid it? Kofi asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Can I not simply take the stone and restore my mother without losing something of my own? The old man shook his head slowly, his gaze softening with pity. You cannot bargain with the river, Kofi. The balance must be maintained. The river does not give without taking, and it does not take without leaving something in its wake. You have already begun to feel it, haven't you? Kofi glanced at the stone in his hand. Its glow was brighter now, almost blinding, but he didn't need the stone to tell him what he had already begun to feel. A heaviness had settled in his chest, a subtle weight that wasn't there before. Something had shifted within him, but what? He turned to the old man, his eyes searching. What will happen to me? The old man sighed, stepping closer. That, my boy, is the price of balance. You have chosen to restore your mother, to break the curse. But to do so, you must give up a part of yourself. The river will take what it deems necessary. The question is, will you be able to accept it when it comes for you? Kofi's heart pounded in his chest. The idea of losing something, something precious, something he couldn't even name, was unbearable. But he had already come so far. His mother needed him. He couldn't stop now, not when he was so close. "I will accept whatever it takes," Kofi said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "But please, help me understand. What is the price? What will it take from me?" The old man's eyes softened, and he placed a hand on Kofi's shoulder. "The river is not merciful, Kofi. It takes what it must to maintain the balance. It may take your strength, your memories, or even your connection to this world. But it will take something, and in doing so, it will make you stronger if you are willing to accept the loss." Kofi looked down at the stone in his hands, his grip tightening around it. He could feel the river's power surging through him, the weight of its presence pressing down on him. The stone was both a gift and a curse, and it was up to him to decide whether he could live with what it demanded. "I don't care what it takes," Kofi said, his voice steady. "I'll do anything to save her." The old man nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Then go. The river will show you the way. But remember, once you pass through this, there is no turning back. You will be forever changed." Kofi nodded and turned, stepping deeper into the jungle toward the source of the river. The path ahead was still shrouded in mystery, the trees thick and impenetrable. But with the stone of balance in his hand, Kofi felt a sense of purpose like never before. He was ready to face whatever came next. As Kofi continued on his path, the jungle seemed to close in around him. The air grew thicker, the sounds of the jungle louder, and the moonlight dimmer. He could feel the river's power growing stronger with each step he took. The stone of balance pulsed in his hand, its glow casting eerie shadows on the ground. And then, as if the jungle itself had opened up before him, Kofi found himself standing at the edge of the river. The water was deep and dark, flowing swiftly, and in the center of the river, a massive rock jutted out, a stone altar, ancient and worn, waiting for him. Kofi stepped forward, the air around him vibrating with energy. The river whispered, its current quickening as he approached the altar. He had come this far, but now, standing before the river's source, he felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. With trembling hands, he placed the stone of balance on the altar. The moment his fingers left it, the water began to glow. The stone pulsed with a blinding light, and Kofi felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if something was being torn from him. The river's voice echoed in his mind. "The balance is restored. The price has been paid." Kofi fell to his knees, clutching his chest. The world around him began to spin, and his vision blurred. He could feel something slipping away, something deep within him. His memories, his strength, his connection to the world, it was all being drained. But in that moment, a vision appeared before him. His mother, standing tall and proud, her arms open to him. The stone statue of Queen Amina began to crumble, turning back into flesh and blood before his eyes. Her eyes, once cold and lifeless, now glowed with warmth. Kofi has made the ultimate sacrifice to restore his mother, but what will be the cost of his decision? Will he be able to live with the price the river demanded? Stay tuned to discover the final consequences of Kofi's journey. Kofi's chest tightened, the sharp, searing pain in his body threatening to tear him apart. The river's current, once gentle and inviting, now seemed to rage around him. The sound of the rushing water grew louder in his ears, its force pulling at him, demanding something from him that he wasn't sure he could give. His hands trembled as he clutched his chest, the life within him slowly being drained away by the river's unyielding grip. He fell to his knees, his breath shallow, his vision beginning to blur. The world around him spun, and the image of his mother's stone statue faded before his eyes. In its place, he saw her as she had once been, alive, strong, and full of the quiet strength that had guided their people. But what was the cost of this life? The question echoed in his mind like a drumbeat, each thrum of his heart a reminder of what he had given to restore her. His strength, his memories, his connection to this world. He felt them slipping away. A part of him was disappearing, just as the river spirit had promised. His mother had always taught him to protect what was dear to him, but in that moment, Kofi realized that he couldn't protect everything. The river demanded balance, and balance came at a cost. As the world around him dimmed, Kofi saw a flash of light, a vision of his mother's face, her eyes filled with warmth and love, smiling at him from the shadows of the river. But this time it was different. This time, she wasn't stone. She wasn't a statue. She was alive. Kofi, the voice called out to him, soft but unmistakable. Kofi, you have done well. You have chosen the right path. Come to me. Kofi's heart surged with hope. He couldn't see her clearly, but he felt her presence in his chest like a steady pulse, guiding him towards something important. His hands shook with newfound strength as the pain in his body began to subside. The current of the river slowed, and the fierce light around him began to dim. Mother, he whispered, his voice trembling. Is it really you? The river's voice responded, echoing in his mind once more, deep and resonant. The stone of balance has given you what you sought. But the price is not as simple as you think. The river only takes what must be given. Kofi clenched his fists, his body still heavy with the weight of his decision. I didn't know what it would cost, he admitted, his voice filled with pain and regret. I didn't know I would lose so much. The river's voice softened, almost sorrowful. Balance is not just about gaining, Kofi. It is about letting go. And in letting go, you will find your true self. Kofi's mind reeled. His mother, his queen, had given her life to protect their village, and now Kofi had given a part of himself to restore her. But the price had been higher than he had imagined. He staggered to his feet, his body weak but determined. I will face it, he said, his voice full of newfound resolve. I will accept the price. Whatever it is, I will restore my mother. As he spoke, the river's currents seemed to calm. The roar of the rushing water faded, and Kofi found himself standing in a small, quiet pool. The stone of balance, now glowing softly in his hand, seemed to pulse with energy. The river, its once powerful current now gentle, swirled around him, its waters shimmering in the moonlight. And then, as if responding to his declaration, a figure emerged from the water. It was his mother. She was standing before him, her form shimmering as if she were made of water, her eyes glowing with an ethereal light. She was no longer a statue. She was alive, her body restored, her soul free from the stone that had once trapped her. Kofi, she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. You did it. You saved me. Tears welled in Kofi's eyes as he looked at her. His mother, alive, restored, stood before him. And for the first time since the curse had been placed upon her, he could see the warmth and love in her eyes. The river's power had given her back to him. But at what cost? I did it for you, Kofi whispered, his voice breaking. I didn't want to lose you. She stepped forward, her form solidifying with every step until she was standing directly in front of him. I know, my son, she said, her voice filled with tenderness. But you've given more than just your strength. You've given a part of your heart, your spirit. That is the true cost of balance. Kofi felt his heart swell with love and sadness, a mixture of emotions too overwhelming to describe. He had done it. He had saved her. But now, standing before her, he could feel the loss that the river had taken from him. He had given a part of his essence, his memories, his connection to the village and to the world around him. He had sacrificed so much, but in return, he had gained something even greater, the return of his mother and the restoration of balance. His mother, Queen Amina, took his hands in hers, her touch warm and grounding. The river has given us both a gift, Kofi, but you must understand, the balance is not just about sacrifice, it's about understanding. Understanding that we must give of ourselves to protect the things we hold dear. You've done that, my son. You've learned what it means to truly live in harmony with the forces around us. Kofi nodded, a sense of peace washing over him as he looked into his mother's eyes. He had done what he needed to do. The river's power had tested him, but he had passed the trial. And now it was time to return. As Kofi and his mother walked back toward the village, the path ahead seemed lighter, brighter. The jungle that had once felt oppressive now seemed welcoming. the trees standing tall as if guiding them home. The river, too, seemed to hum with a quiet energy, its flow steady and calm. Kofi felt his strength returning, but more importantly, he felt a sense of connection to the river, to his mother, and to the village he had always loved. The cost of balance had been great, but he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more attuned to the world around him. When they reached the village, the elders greeted them with a mixture of awe and relief. They had feared the worst, but now they saw Kofi and his mother walking toward them, alive, restored, and ready to lead once more. Queen Amina, now fully restored, looked at Kofi with pride. The river has given us this chance, Kofi, but we must continue to honor its power to live in balance. Kofi nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had learned the true meaning of balance, and he would carry that lesson with him always. Together, with his mother by his side, they would lead their people into a future where the river's power was respected, its gifts treasured, and its balance maintained. Kofi's journey has come to an end, but his understanding of balance, sacrifice, and growth will stay with him forever. What do you think Kofi's greatest lesson was? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The village of Dumburu had never looked the same to Kofi. The morning sun now seemed brighter, the air fresher, and the river itself, once a symbol of danger and uncertainty, now appeared serene and welcoming. Queen Amina, restored to her full strength, stood beside him as they made their way to the village square. The villagers gathered, their eyes filled with a mix of awe and gratitude, unsure of how to react to the miraculous return of their queen. As Kofi walked alongside his mother, he could feel the weight of the responsibility settling upon him. The journey had changed him. The sacrifices he had made, the price of balance he had paid, it was not just a personal loss, but a lesson that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. When they reached the village square, the elders stepped forward, their faces solemn but filled with reverence. They had long feared that the ancient balance had been broken, that the river would no longer sustain them. But now, the river had given them a second chance, one they could not take for granted. Queen Amina raised her hand, calling for silence. The villagers obeyed, their chatter dying down into a hushed anticipation. The queen's gaze swept over them, and for the first time in many years, she looked at them not as a ruler, but as a fellow member of the community, someone who had faced the same trials, the same losses, and emerged stronger for it. "My people," Queen Amina began, her voice carrying with the authority and warmth that had made her a beloved leader. "The river has shown us its power, its strength, and its judgment. It has given us a second chance, a chance to restore the balance that was lost. But we must remember, balance is not something we can control. It is something we must live with." The villagers nodded, their faces filled with reverence. They had always respected the river, but they had never truly understood it, until now. Many years ago, the queen continued, "We made a pact with the river. We gave it our trust, and in return, it provided for us. But the price of that trust was great. And today, my son, Kofi, has shown us what it truly means to honor that pact. He has paid the price of balance. He has faced the river's judgment and emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected to the forces that sustain us." Kofi looked up at his mother, his heart swelling with pride and humility. The journey had been difficult, and the sacrifices he had made were ones he would never forget. But seeing his mother, the queen, stand before the villagers, her voice steady and filled with wisdom, made him realize that their shared journey was just the beginning. As we move forward, Queen Amina said, her voice growing stronger, "We must not forget the lessons we have learned. We must respect the river, honor its power, and live in harmony with it. It is the river that sustains us, but it is our responsibility to ensure that we sustain it in return." Kofi stepped forward, feeling a weight settle on his shoulders. The village had always looked to his mother for guidance, but now they would look to both of them. He had never imagined himself as a leader, but the river had shown him that leadership was not just about strength. It was about understanding, sacrifice, and the willingness to make difficult choices for the greater good. "Mother," Kofi said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I will do everything in my power to honor the river, to lead our people, and to ensure that we live in balance. I am ready to take on the responsibilities you have entrusted to me." Queen Amina smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "You have already proven yourself, Kofi. You have shown more courage and wisdom than I could ever have hoped for. Now, it is your turn to lead our people into a new dawn, a dawn of balance, peace, and understanding." The villagers erupted into applause, their cheers echoing across the square. For the first time in many years, there was a sense of unity, of hope. The journey had been long and difficult, but the village had emerged stronger, more connected, and ready to embrace a new chapter. As the cheers died down, Queen Amina raised her hand once more, signaling for silence. "There is one more thing," she said, her voice filled with quiet strength. "The river's power is not something we can ever take for granted. It will continue to test us, to challenge us, and to remind us of the balance we must maintain. But as long as we respect it, honor it, and live in harmony with it, we will thrive. We will protect the river, and the river will protect us." Kofi stood by his mother's side, his heart swelling with pride as he looked out over the village. The road ahead would not be easy. The river, the jungle, and the spirits of their ancestors would continue to test them. But for the first time, Kofi felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that he was not alone. The village had come together, united by the lessons of the river and the sacrifices made. The queen, once a symbol of power, was now a symbol of wisdom and grace. Kofi, her son, had taken on the mantle of leadership, not because he had to, but because he had learned what it meant to lead with balance, with understanding, and with love. As the sun began to set over the village, casting a warm, golden glow across the land, Kofi turned to his mother. "Do you think the river will ever stop testing us?" he asked quietly. Queen Amina smiled, her eyes reflecting the light of the setting sun. "The river will never stop testing us, Kofi. But that is the beauty of it. It keeps us humble, keeps us grounded. We will never stop learning, never stop growing. And as long as we remember that, we will always be ready." Kofi nodded, feeling the weight of his new role settle on his shoulders. The river had taught him much, and it would continue to teach him. But he knew now that the journey was not about reaching a destination. It was about the balance, the understanding, and the willingness to grow, no matter the price. As the night fell and the village settled into a peaceful silence, Kofi stood by the river, looking out over the water. It was calm now, its surface reflecting the moonlight like a mirror. He knew that this was just the beginning. A new dawn had arrived, and with it, a new chapter for the village, for his mother, and for him. Kofi's journey has led him to this moment. A new beginning for him and his village. But what challenges will they face next? Will the river continue to test them? Stay tuned for the next chapter in Kofi's adventure. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories of leadership, sacrifice, and growth. The village of Dumburu had begun to settle into a new rhythm. Kofi, now recognized as the co-leader alongside his mother, Queen Amina, had taken on his responsibilities with a sense of purpose. The days were filled with meetings, discussions, and the steady work of ensuring that the balance they had fought so hard to restore remained intact. However, Kofi couldn't shake the feeling that the river, that silent force that had guided him on his journey, was calling him again. Every morning, he woke to the sound of the river's flow. The village, nestled between the dense jungle and the fertile land, had flourished since his return with the Stone of Balance. Crops grew tall and strong. The villagers' hearts seemed lighter, and the land prospered as it had in the days of old. But deep within Kofi, a strange unease lingered. The river was more than a source of life. It was a living, breathing entity that had tested him, guided him, and demanded a sacrifice. He had saved his mother, but now he couldn't help but wonder if the river was calling him for something more. Kofi stood at the river's edge one early morning, watching the water swirl as the sun rose above the horizon. The river, in all its quiet majesty, seemed to hum with life, its surface smooth and shimmering in the soft light. But beneath that surface, Kofi sensed something, a presence that beckoned him, that urged him forward. "You've come far, Kofi." The voice came from behind him, soft and familiar. It was Juma, the mysterious stranger who had helped him on his journey. Kofi turned to see him standing a few feet away, his eyes filled with quiet wisdom, as if he knew what was troubling Kofi. "You've done well. The river has given you much, but there's more you need to understand." Kofi nodded, his gaze fixed on the river. "The river, it's calling me again. I can feel it." Juma stepped closer, his face grave. "Yes, Kofi, the river is not just a source of power. It is a force of nature that requires balance. You have restored that balance, but the river will always demand more. It does not give without reason. And as its protector, you must understand that there is always a price." Kofi's heart tightened. "I've already given so much. What more can the river ask of me?" Juma's eyes softened, and he placed a hand on Kofi's shoulder. "You've learned the hardest lesson, Kofi. Sacrifice is not just about what you give up. It's about understanding that true leadership requires more than just strength. It requires wisdom, compassion, and the ability to make difficult choices for the greater good. The river calls you because it knows that you are ready to face what lies ahead." Kofi swallowed hard, his thoughts swirling. He had faced the river's power before, and he had emerged stronger for it. But this felt different. The river's call was not just for his mother anymore. It was calling to him, specifically, to lead, to protect, and to understand its deeper secrets. "What is the river asking me to do?" Kofi asked, his voice steady but filled with a new sense of responsibility. Juma's gaze shifted to the horizon, where the sky was painted with the hues of dawn. "The river's call is not a simple request. It demands that you take up the mantle of leadership fully. Your village is safe for now, but the forces that balance the river's power are delicate. There are others who seek the river's power for their own gain. The balance you've restored will be tested again, Kofi. You must prepare to face the challenges ahead, challenges that may test your heart as much as your strength." Kofi felt a wave of determination surge through him. He had already faced the river's judgment once, and though the path ahead was uncertain, he knew one thing for sure. He could not back down. The village depended on him. His mother, his people, everything they had worked for depended on him being the leader they needed. "I will protect it," Kofi said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of his resolve. "I will protect the river, the village, and the balance we've fought to restore. But I need to understand. What lies ahead? What must I face?" Juma smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "The river does not show its true path until you are ready to walk it. The next test will be yours alone. You must follow the river upstream, beyond the place where it begins. There, you'll find what you seek. But be warned, Kofi, the path will be treacherous. The jungle grows denser, the spirits more restless. You will face trials like you've never known. Only those who truly understand the river's power can pass." Kofi nodded, determination setting in. "I will face it. I'll do whatever it takes to protect the river and my people." Juma's expression softened. "The river will reveal itself when the time is right, but you must be prepared to sacrifice once more. Remember, the price of balance is not always something you can control." Kofi turned back to the river, the waters now moving more swiftly, as though acknowledging his resolve. The time had come to face the river's deeper secrets. But he knew now that his journey was not just about restoring his mother. It was about protecting everything that had been built and learning to lead with wisdom, compassion, and strength. As the days passed, Kofi prepared himself for the journey ahead. He gathered supplies, spoke to the elders, and trained his body to endure the trials that lay before him. The villagers had placed their trust in him, and he couldn't let them down. The river had given him the strength to return his mother to life. Now, he would prove that he was ready for the next step, to truly understand the river's power and the sacrifices it demanded. The night before his departure, Kofi stood by the river once more, the stones still heavy in his hand. He could feel the weight of the river's call within him, its pulse steady and strong. He had learned much already, but the journey ahead would demand even more. The next test awaited him, and with it the answers he sought. The river's secrets were waiting to be revealed. If you're still watching, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. Kofi stood at the river's edge, the water glistening in the morning light. The weight of the journey ahead pressed heavily on him, and though the sun was high, the air was cool and dense with the scent of the jungle. He had prepared himself, mentally and physically, for what was to come. But even with his resolve strong and his heart steady, there was an unsettling stillness in the air, something he could not ignore. The village had celebrated his return, his mother restored to her rightful place as queen, but Kofi knew that his real test had only just begun. The stone of balance he had returned with had given them peace, but the river's true power was still a mystery. Juma had warned him about the challenges ahead, but what did that mean? What more could the river possibly demand? He turned to look at his mother, Queen Amina, who stood a few feet behind him. Her regal presence seemed to settle the air around them, but even her calmness couldn't dispel the tension that lingered in Kofi's chest. She had been restored to life, yet Kofi felt as though the river had already begun to take something else from him, a part of his spirit, his heart, something intangible. "Are you ready, Kofi?" his mother asked softly, her voice filled with the wisdom and grace that had always defined her. Kofi nodded, though uncertainty clouded his mind. "I don't know if I'll ever be ready, but I must go. The river is calling me, and I can't turn my back on it now." Amina smiled faintly. The river will always call. It tests us, pushes us, but it also teaches us what it means to lead, to sacrifice, and to protect. You have already learned much, but remember, the journey will not end at the source. It will only lead you to more questions and to deeper choices. Kofi turned away from his mother, taking a deep breath before stepping into the water. The river greeted him with its cool touch, the current gentle but persistent, as if urging him forward. Each step he took deeper into the river felt like a step into the unknown, but he could not turn back. He had come too far, and the village, his mother, and the legacy of the river were all intertwined with his actions now. The jungle was silent around him, as though the world itself was waiting for something. The thick trees closed in, the sounds of the forest muted by the flowing water. The river, once a source of life and power, now felt like a living entity, one that was aware of his every move, watching him, testing him. The deeper Kofi waded, the more the air seemed to thicken. The weight of the water around him grew, as though the river was pushing against him, testing his strength. His legs began to feel heavy, each step harder than the last. The current had started to pull at him, dragging him further from the shore, but he fought to keep his feet steady. And then, suddenly, the river's surface rippled violently. Kofi's heart leapt in his chest as the water around him churned. The river that had once been gentle, that had guided him on his journey, was now turning against him. The water rose higher, swirling like a vortex, its surface dark and frothing with an unnatural energy. Before Kofi could react, something massive rose from the depths. It was an ancient creature, its body coiled in the river's flow. The beast was like nothing Kofi had ever seen before. Its body was covered in thick, iridescent scales, and its eyes glowed a haunting green. Its serpent-like form slithered through the water, its body as long as the jungle was wide. Kofi stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. The creature's gaze locked onto him, and for a moment, it felt as if time itself had stopped. He could feel the river's power in the creature's presence, the ancient energy that flowed through it as though it were the very embodiment of the river's will. The creature hissed, the sound vibrating through Kofi's bones. It rose higher from the water, its massive form casting a shadow over him. Kofi knew immediately that it was a guardian of the river, a being born from the river's depths to protect its secrets. "Why have you come, child of the river?" The creature's voice boomed, its voice deep and thunderous, reverberating through Kofi's very soul. The words were not spoken, but felt in his mind, as though the river itself was communicating through the creature. "I have come to understand the river's power," Kofi answered, his voice steady despite the fear building inside him. "I need to know the truth." I need to restore the balance. The creature's eyes narrowed, its scales shimmering like liquid light. The balance cannot be restored by force alone. The river does not give its power to those who seek it without understanding. You must prove your worth. Kofi's heart raced. What do you mean? What must I do? The creature rose even higher, its enormous form towering over Kofi as it spoke again. To restore the balance, you must face the river's judgment. You will be tested in mind, body, and spirit. Only then will the true path be revealed to you. With that, the creature lunged forward, its powerful tail striking the water with a force that sent a wave crashing into Kofi. He barely managed to leap to the side, his body thrown off balance by the surge of water. He struggled to regain his footing, but the river seemed to rise against him, its force growing stronger with every step he took. As Kofi fought against the current, trying to stay grounded, the creature's voice echoed in his mind again. The river will not yield to you without sacrifice, Kofi. To restore the balance, you must face the price of your actions. The river around him grew darker, the water swirling more violently. Kofi could feel it, the weight of the river's judgment, the cost of the choice he had made. He was no longer just a boy seeking to save his mother. He was part of something far greater, something ancient and unyielding. He clenched his fists, pushing against the water with all his strength. I will face whatever the river demands. I will not turn back. The creature's eyes gleamed with approval. Then prepare yourself, Kofi. The river's test has only begun. The creature's form loomed over Kofi, its enormous tail sweeping through the water like a tidal wave. The river roared in fury, its once serene flow now a turbulent force that sought to overwhelm him. Kofi's heart raced, but his mind remained clear. This was the test the river had spoken of, the trial that would determine whether he could truly restore the balance and save his mother. The air around him was thick with tension, and the water churned violently at his feet. He could feel the river's power pressing against him, its energy overwhelming, as if it was testing his very soul. Every instinct told him to fight back, to struggle against the current, but he knew better. The river was not an enemy to be defeated. It was a force of nature, one that demanded understanding, respect, and acceptance. The creature's glowing eyes fixed on him, and its voice echoed in his mind again. You seek to restore the balance, Kofi. But before you can do so, you must prove that you understand the cost of power. You must face the 3 trials of the river. Only then will you be ready to bear the burden of its gift. Kofi nodded, his body tense, but his resolve unwavering. He had come this far, and he would not turn back now. What are the trials? He asked, his voice steady despite the swirling chaos around him. The creature's voice resonated within his chest, its tone deep and powerful. The first trial is one of strength. You will face the river's wrath. Only by enduring its fury can you prove that you are worthy of its power. Before Kofi could react, the river erupted. The water around him surged with incredible force, and a massive wave crashed over him, sweeping him off his feet. He gasped for air as the water surged above him, pulling him deeper into the river's current. For a moment, he lost sight of everything: the jungle, the creature, even his own body. The river's power overwhelmed him, its cold embrace threatening to pull him under. But Kofi refused to succumb. His legs kicked beneath him, his arms flailing, reaching for anything to hold on to. He was being dragged under, the water pressing against him from all sides, but he didn't give up. He had faced trials before. He had fought for his mother, fought for his village, and fought for his future. This was no different. Kofi focused on his breath, trying to remain calm, trying to center himself amid the chaos. He was not alone. He could feel his mother's presence deep within him, a steady, unshakable force that reminded him of the love and strength she had always given him. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the cold, slick rocks beneath him. He grabbed onto one, pulling himself toward the surface with all the strength he had left. The river roared, its fury unrelenting, but Kofi didn't let go. The stone beneath his fingers was rough and jagged, but it was solid. It was real. With a final, desperate pull, Kofi broke through the surface of the water, gasping for air. His body ached, his muscles burned, but he had made it. The river's wrath had tested him, but he had endured. He had faced its fury and survived. The creature's voice boomed, low and approving. You have passed the first trial. You have withstood the river's wrath. Kofi gasped, his chest heaving as he clung to the rock. The water around him calmed, the raging current subsiding into a gentle flow. But Kofi knew this was only the beginning. The river was not finished with him yet. The creature's voice echoed in his mind again, its tone more somber. The second trial is one of heart. You must face the river's grief. Only by confronting the sorrow within yourself can you prove that you are ready to bear the river's power. Kofi's heart sank as he heard the words. Grief? What did the river mean by that? His journey had already been filled with loss. The loss of his mother, the loss of innocence, the loss of his connection to the village. But he had always pushed through it, never fully facing the depths of his sorrow. The water around him rippled once more, and this time, it wasn't the river's fury that he felt. It was something much more subtle, something that tugged at his very soul. The water seemed to glow with an eerie light, and Kofi felt a deep sadness fill his chest. Memories of his childhood, the happy moments with his mother, the village gatherings, the laughter that had once filled his home, flooded his mind. But there, too, were the memories of the pain, the fear, and the uncertainty. The day his mother had been turned to stone. The day the village had fallen silent, the air thick with the weight of their loss. The day he had realized that everything he had once known had been taken from him. The grief was overwhelming, suffocating, and Kofi felt himself sinking into it. He wanted to resist it, to push it away, but the river's power was too great. It forced him to face the sorrow he had buried deep inside him. He couldn't run from it anymore. It was a part of him. Tears blurred his vision as the weight of the grief bore down on him. He thought of his mother, of her strength, her wisdom, and the love she had given him. She had been his protector, his guiding light. And now, she was gone, trapped in stone forever. But even as the tears fell, Kofi felt something shift within him. The grief was not something to fight. It was something to understand. His mother's sacrifice had been a part of the balance the river demanded. And his own grief, his own sorrow, was a part of that balance as well. Kofi closed his eyes, letting the tears flow freely. He understood now. Grief was not a weakness. It was a necessary part of life, a part of the balance. He couldn't protect his mother from it, but he could accept it. He could allow it to guide him, to show him the strength that came from embracing both joy and sorrow. As the grief subsided, Kofi opened his eyes, his chest feeling lighter. He had faced the river's sorrow, and he had accepted it. The river had tested his heart, but he had passed. The creature's voice once more resonated in his mind. You have passed the second trial. You have faced the river's grief and accepted its weight. Kofi nodded, wiping the tears from his face, feeling the strength return to his body. But the trials were not over yet. The third trial is one of spirit. You must face the river's truth. Only by understanding the full cost of your choices can you prove that you are truly ready to restore the balance. Kofi's heart skipped a beat. Truth? What truth? What more could the river ask of him? But before he could ponder the question further, the water around him began to shimmer and swirl, its surface rippling with an otherworldly energy. The final trial was about to begin. Kofi stood on the edge of the river, his body trembling as the water around him swirled violently. The trials had tested his strength, his heart, and his understanding of grief. But this, the third trial, was something entirely different. The creature's words echoed in his mind. You must face the river's truth. What truth? What more could the river demand of him? The answer was unclear, but deep within him, he knew that the trial ahead would reveal something he had been avoiding. The air around him thickened, and the river's surface grew darker, its current quicker and more forceful. The once calm waters were now churning with a power that Kofi could feel in his bones. A sense of dread washed over him, as though the river was about to reveal something that he had been blind to, something that had been hidden from him all along. As the water rippled, Kofi saw something strange begin to take shape. A figure rising from the depths, ethereal and faint, like a ghost. It was his mother. Kofi's heart skipped a beat as he watched her form emerge from the water. She was standing before him, but she was not fully whole. Her face was blurred, her features distorted, and the glow of the water surrounding her seemed to distort her presence. "Mother," Kofi whispered, his voice shaking. "Is it really you?" The figure nodded slowly, but the voice that came from it was not the voice he remembered. It was distant, hollow. "I am your mother, Kofi. But I'm also more than just your mother. I am the river, and the river is me." Kofi's mind reeled as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The river is me? He could barely grasp the meaning, but he understood that this was not a simple illusion. This was the river revealing itself in a way that Kofi had never imagined. "What do you mean?" Kofi asked, his voice trembling with confusion. "How can you be the river? How can the river be you?" The figure of his mother stepped closer, the water surrounding her shimmering with light. "The river is more than a force of nature, Kofi. It is a living entity, a consciousness that has existed long before time itself. It is tied to every life, every spirit, every person who has ever walked this land. And I, as your mother, was chosen to guard its power, to protect its balance." Kofi's chest tightened as the weight of her words settled on him. "But why? Why did you have to sacrifice yourself? Why did you turn into stone?" The figure's eyes softened, and for a moment, Kofi saw the warmth and love he had known all his life. "I didn't choose the path of sacrifice, Kofi. The river did. It chose me to hold the balance, to keep the river's power from falling into the wrong hands. But the balance cannot be controlled. It cannot be contained. When the time came for you to take on the mantle of leadership, the river tested you, and it demanded a price." Kofi's heart beat faster as he tried to process her words. "A price? What price? What do you mean?" The figure's eyes darkened, and the water around her began to swirl violently again. "The price of the river's power is not one you can easily understand. The river does not give without a test. It asks for your heart, your spirit, your very soul. The river's truth is that power, true power, is not given freely. It demands something in return." Kofi took a step back, fear rising in his chest. "You mean, it's asking me to sacrifice something more?" The figure nodded solemnly. "Yes, Kofi. The river demands balance, but balance requires sacrifice. To restore the river's power, to save your mother, to bring the village back to peace, you must give up something that has always been a part of you. The river will not restore what has been broken without taking something else in return." Kofi's mind spun. What was it asking from him? He had already given so much, his strength, his memories, his connection to the village. Could the river ask for more? Was there anything left to sacrifice? "What will I lose?" Kofi asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The figure's face softened with a look of compassion. "You will lose a part of yourself, Kofi, a part that you may not realize you're holding on to. You must decide if you are willing to let it go. The balance cannot be restored without it." Kofi's hands shook as he stared at his mother's form. The truth was becoming clearer, but the weight of it was unbearable. He had already sacrificed so much, but now he was being asked to give up something even more precious. "I don't understand. What must I give up?" Kofi pleaded. The river's spirit gazed at him, her voice filled with the weight of ancient wisdom. "You must give up your connection to this world, Kofi. You must let go of the life you once knew. The village, the people, the memories. The river cannot restore balance if you are tied to the world you seek to protect. You must choose the river's truth or your past." Kofi's chest tightened as he felt the truth of her words sink in. He had come so far. He had fought for his mother, for his village, for everything he held dear. But to restore the balance, he had to make a choice. The river would not give him everything back. It would take something else. His mind raced. Could he truly let go of everything? His home? His memories? His identity? The river's voice softened, as if sensing his hesitation. "The balance requires that you face the truth of what you hold most dear. To restore the peace, to save your mother, You must choose to let go. The question is not what you will lose, Kofi. It is what you are willing to give up to restore the harmony of the river. Kofi closed his eyes, his heart heavy with the weight of the decision before him. He had already sacrificed so much, but this was different. This was not just about saving his mother. It was about letting go of everything he had ever known. With a deep breath, Kofi stepped forward, his resolve firming. I choose the river. I will give whatever it demands. I will face the truth, and I will restore the balance. The figure of his mother smiled, her form beginning to fade as the water around her grew still. Then you are ready, Kofi. The river has tested you, and you have passed. The balance is restored. The river's truth has been revealed. As the figure of his mother disappeared into the water, Kofi felt a surge of energy flood through him. The river's power, its balance, its secrets, they were no longer a mystery. He had understood the cost of power, the price of balance. And now, the river had given him the gift he had sought all along. Kofi has faced the river's ultimate test and chosen to restore the balance. But what does this mean for his future? Will he be able to live with the sacrifice he's made? Stay tuned for the final chapter in Kofi's journey. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to follow the conclusion of his incredible adventure. The moonlight filtered softly through the canopy above, casting a quiet glow across the river. Kofi stood at the water's edge, his heart heavy but steady. The trials were over, and he had made his choice. The river, in all its infinite wisdom, had asked for a sacrifice, and Kofi had given what was demanded of him, not just his strength, but a part of his soul, a part of his connection to the world he had once known. The air around him was thick with the echoes of the river's judgment, and the weight of his decision felt both heavy and freeing. The balance had been restored, but he could not return to the life he had once lived. The river's call had changed him, had reshaped his purpose, and now the future lay before him, unknown and full of potential. Kofi's mind wandered back to the village, to the people he had left behind. His mother, Queen Amina, had been restored, but the world they returned to would not be the same. Kofi had seen the truth. The river was not simply a force of nature. It was a living entity, one that demanded respect and balance, one that tested the very core of those who sought its power. And Kofi had been tested in ways he could never have imagined. He glanced at the stone in his hand, now dull and lifeless, the glow that had once radiated from it gone. The stone of balance had fulfilled its purpose, but it had also cost him more than he had expected. The part of his past, the memories, the connections, the life he had known, was now a distant echo, a faint shadow of who he had been. He had chosen the river's truth, and in doing so, had allowed the past to slip away. But Kofi didn't regret his choice. Not anymore. Suddenly, a soft rustling in the trees behind him broke his thoughts. He turned to see Juma, the mysterious old man who had guided him through the jungle, walking slowly toward him. His eyes were filled with a quiet understanding, as though he had known all along that Kofi was destined to face this moment. "You've done it, Kofi," Juma said softly, his voice full of respect. "The river has tested you, and you have passed. The balance is restored, and your mother is free." Kofi nodded, feeling the weight of the words settle on his chest. "But the price," he whispered, his voice trailing off. "What have I lost, Juma? What have I given up?" Juma's eyes glinted with a knowing sadness. "You have given up a part of yourself, Kofi, a part of your past. But in doing so, you have gained something far more powerful. You have gained wisdom, strength, and the understanding of what it truly means to protect and lead." Kofi looked out across the river, his mind heavy with the sacrifice he had made. He had given up his connection to the world he had once known, but in return, he had gained a deeper connection to the river, to the land, and to the very heart of the village. The river had taught him that true leadership was not about control or power. It was about balance, respect, and the willingness to make sacrifices for the greater good. "You have changed, Kofi," Juma continued, his voice quiet but filled with pride. "The river has chosen you for a reason. You have proven that you are not just a protector, but a leader. a true guardian of the balance. Kofi felt a sense of calm wash over him. For the first time since he had set foot on this journey, he understood. The trials had not been about restoring his mother or saving the village. They had been about understanding the deeper forces at play in the world around him. The river, with its power and its mysteries, had shown him that life was not about control. It was about harmony, and that harmony required sacrifice. "I understand now," Kofi said quietly, his voice steady. "I understand that the river's power is not something to be feared or sought after for personal gain. It is something to be respected. It is something to guide us, to teach us the value of balance." Juma smiled, his face lighting up with pride. "You are ready, Kofi. The river has given you its gift, and you have embraced it. Now, it is time to return to your people. The village needs you, and the river's gift will guide you in the years to come." Kofi nodded, his heart swelling with a mixture of sadness and hope. He had given up his past, but he had gained something far greater. He was ready to return to the village, to lead with the wisdom he had learned, and to protect the balance of the river that had once seemed so mysterious and dangerous. The journey had been long, but it had brought him to this moment, a moment of understanding, of transformation. The river had not only restored his mother, but had shown Kofi what it truly meant to lead. It was not about strength, power, or control. It was about balance, sacrifice, and the wisdom to know when to let go. As Kofi turned to leave, he felt the pull of the river one last time, a quiet, subtle call that seemed to resonate deep within his soul. The river was always with him now, its power flowing through his veins. He had embraced it, and it had embraced him in return. With a final look at the river's calm surface, Kofi made his way back to the village. The journey was over, but his role as a leader had just begun. The river had given him its gift, and he would carry that gift with him, guiding his people with the wisdom and strength he had earned. The village would thrive. The river's balance would be maintained, and Kofi, now a true leader, would ensure that the lessons of the river would never be forgotten. Kofi's journey has come to an end, but his true journey is just beginning. What does the future hold for him and the village? Will the river's wisdom guide him through the challenges ahead? Comment what you think and subscribe for more interesting stories.